So what do you say if your prospect tells you after your whole entire pitch and finessing the lead and massaging the lead and doing all the yes ma'ams and, and yes sirs, what do you say to them when you go through all that tap dancing and then they just end it with, oh, I want to think about it, or oh, I got to think about it, and don't get me wrong, I mean, there's two ways they could say let me think about it. One is they genuinely do have to think about it. Like maybe you did the pitch where it's only with one of the decision makers and it's a married couple, or you're doing the pitch because someone who makes the decision wasn't there, so you had someone else fill in to kind of go through the pitch. And so in those cases you have to almost already expect that they're gonna come up with that objection of having to think about it, or having to take some time to go over the information. And that's why I always recommend throughout my other video content is that the second that you get an idea, there's another person involved that makes a decision. Even if the person you're engaging with says, oh, no, it's me. There's certain situations where it's likely that the decision can also weigh on another party. And so you got to pick up on those cues, you got to pick up on those signs and adjust accordingly. Adjust accordingly meaning that you schedule the appointment when both are ready. And there's covert ways to do that. You got to check out the other videos and I cover that. But then there's a second way. There's a second way that I can tell you where it's like, oh, I got to think about it. And you can kind of sense in their tone that they're not going to be ready, or they're never going to call you back, or that's just their way of being decent and telling you no thanks. And from my experience, what I've noticed is that objection happens a lot with sales agents and sales representatives who are just way too detailed. I mean, they're going over jargon and fucking underwriting clause, that only industry experts would know about, or other people who work within that industry or that niche. So you have to pay mind to that and understand that the jargon, the daily lingo that you use at work with your employees who understand certain acronyms or certain abbreviations or certain nicknames, your prospect doesn't understand that. And by you saying that or using those terms with them, you're actually pushing them away from your product, because it's human nature to fear what you don't understand. You want to avoid it. You want to get away from it. In the same breath, you could be giving too much information, like sharing graphs and all types of different colors, or simply put too many different options, where you're actually forcing the objection of I have to think about it. And so my recommendation to you is that to get around it is to format your pitch and delivery in a way where there is no thinking about it. Meaning that, if you caught my other video on how to prepare for a second call or how to prepare for a pitch, the pitch always starts in the same way. And so when you're calling your client, let's say you got a 4:30 appointment to go through your presentation or your pitch. And I sell my businesses over, my product and services over the phone. So all my business is through the telephone. And so I'll schedule an appointment, let's say at 4:30, and I know both of them will be ready at 4. I'll say, you know what, I'll give you a ring around 4:30. Does that work for you? And I would purposely call them around 4 o'clock or 4:15, sometime where I know they're actually ready, because they just told me that they'll be available. And I'll call and I'll say, imagine that the consumer's name is John. Hey John, this is Daniel. I was actually putting the information together for our 4:30 appointment, and in doing so, I came across something and I wanted to run it by you real quick. Do you have a minute? Is Mary there, or is Sue there, or whatever their spouse's name, or the other decision maker that you feel could play a role in the final say? And when you open it up that way, it's different than saying, hey John, I got some information on the numbers that I went over with, I gathered from you, and so I'm going to cover 3 options with you. Are you ready? And when you present it in that way as an alternative, which you might be presenting it right now, you're actually putting your prospect on guard. And before you called, John and his wife, they're both talking about how they're not going to make a decision at pitch time. They're prepared, they got the pen and the pad of paper ready, and they got all their notes, and They kind of did a quick rehearsal with each other, and you have to expect this. And so by opening up your pitch, by saying, hey John, you know what, I was putting the information together for a 4:30 appointment, and I came across something. I want to get your feedback first. Is your wife available? Put me on speakerphone. I want to get her input too. And more than likely they'll say, yeah, sure, what do you got? Or what do you need? And in essence, what you're doing is you're just capturing their attention. So now they're focused on you, but they're not focused on what you're about to say with a guard. And so by you opening up your pitch, and you know, when they ask you what do you got, you just go into your pitch and you say, hey, you know what, I came across an option, and on our last call you had mentioned that you're really motivated to accomplish A, B, and C. And you had mentioned that when you accomplished A, the difference would allow you to do, you know, D, E, and F, right? And so you get the point. And so I made note of that, and as I was putting the information together, I came across an option that I want to run it by you. I think that it actually hits everything, but I want to get your feedback first, and then you go into, you know, an option. Now the thing is that you're gonna have to have at least two options kind of prepared, right? The option where it's basically eliminating any objection, whether it's price, fee. You might associate that pitch with like a specific bundle or a special, and then have another backup option where maybe it's not as flashy, it's not as, you know, as expensive, but they come across with maybe lesser benefits. And so that's going to be your backup plan, because what will happen is you know, when you ask them, say, what's your feedback on that? You know, they'll tell you and say, oh, you know what, yeah, that sounds great. And if they do, then you just naturally lead into the close. And you don't ask for the sale. You don't say, okay, great, do you mind if I work it out for you? Don't do it that way. You know, assume the close and say, or assume the sale, assume the participation, assume the compliance from them, and say, you know what, I thought you'd say that. This is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna need these documents from you, or I'm gonna need your ID, or whatever you need to fulfill the sale or fulfill the close. And by doing it that way, in that manner, you're actually making them feel that they made the decision, when in essence it was just a guided sale. Now on the flip side, if they say, oh yeah, you know what, that it sounds great and everything, but it's just too much out of my price range, this is how you come back. You come back with any resistance, say, you know what, I thought you'd say that, and this is why I prepared this option. And then you go into the option that, you know, it's the alternative that basically hits everything that, you know, that they wanted from, you know, from the service or the product. And you have to get creative. You know, you have to know your product, you have to know your services, you have to know the ins and outs, you have to know the alternative ways and different ways you can chop and dissect your package and deliver it to the consumer, right? And so I believe that's the most effective way to avoid, I want to think about it. And don't get me wrong, you're still going to get that objection here and there, but you're going to minimize the likelihood of them having to think about it. Another tip is that, you know, if you are preparing graphs and visuals and great detail, you know, the bottom line price and the bottom line numbers, make sure you have everything you need first. You know, you want to make sure you got compliance from them, because people are less likely to continue thinking if they feel that they've already vested their time, their effort, their energy with you, and you've taken a lot of time, you know, from them, and they've given you a lot of time in return. I'm sorry, you know what I mean. All right, so I hope that makes sense. I think that's very effective in handling that objection of, you know, I want to think about it some more. Is number one is less history, more mystery. You want to leave some anticipation. You don't want to be too detailed. Make sure you get something in return for your time, and the details typically requiring maybe some participation from them. Maybe they have to fill out paperwork. In my industry, I have to get stacks of documents. I have to get tax returns, pay stubs, you know, statements, and proof of insurance. So I have to get a pretty big list. And so I found that to be very effective for them gathering it. And maybe you don't have that much of a challenge. Maybe they only have to do a quick signature or fill out some paperwork. And if so, then this is going to be very effective, because I'm currently using it on prospects to gather 2 years of their financial documentation and hand sign and electronic sign about 40 documents. So if it works well with them, I think it'll work well with you. But, you know, let me know. Give me your feedback, like, share, comment, and I appreciate it. Thanks for joining Sales Remastered. I'll see you later.